Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime. I'm your host, as always, Professor Prime. Let's talk about math and Final Fantasy IV. Oh my God! Before we even get into what this video is gonna go, how it's gonna go, like I want to say, a lot of people say Final Fantasy IV is one of the best Final Fantasy games and one of the best video games. Period. Right? They're not lying. At least from my perspective, that's how I see it. It's like, okay, there are some things there, right? There's some iron in those words. um, but I am digressing. I'm gonna gush about this game as we go on, and I'm not gonna regret it, not one bit. So, but the idea is I'm gonna talk about the math and focusing on the combat, and also just kind of expand from there. Um, Spoilers ahead just to be safe, but I'm actually going to try my best to avoid talking about spoilers because I dig this game. I think it's good to go in there fresh, and I think if you haven't played it, you should. And then, at some point in your life, replay it. Um, I dig this game. Okay, so let's get into it. And again, you can assume spoilers ahead just to be safe, but I'm going to try to avoid them because I really do think it's good to go in there fresh. So let's dig in. So with Final Fantasy IV, it at its core, it gets at what a lot of other Final Fantasy games are getting at, the idea that as far as the gameplay is concerned, the basic part of it is you're trying to dish out damage while trying to avoid it, and if you're going to take some damage, trying to either negate it or recover from it. And while you're doing that, right, you're gaining experiences. I'm sorry, you're gaining experience. Is you're fighting your opponents and you're leveling up. You're boosting your stats, right? You're getting stronger. You're getting faster. You're able to evade some things more, increasing your magic potential, and so on and so forth. And with Final Fantasy IV is no exception to how these things usually go. It does its own thing with it. So one of the things that I like is, right, like you do have these characters where you can argue that yes, they have jobs, like in terms of the character class, right, where they have like a function that they might be better at than some other party member. But here it's just like things are to the point where it's like, okay, yeah, you can see where they have this, but you have a little bit more free range than you would have in maybe like, let's say, Final Fantasy One, for instance. And so you have these characters. You have some functions that they may be better at than some others, and you're getting to learn them, and you're getting different weapons. You are, I'm sorry, you're getting different equipment, and you're getting different items, and you're seeing what everything does, and you're having these buffs and debuffs, and just back and forth with your opponents. And as you're progressing through the battles, you're progressing through the narrative, you're progressing through the world, getting just like stronger all the way, and this interesting loop gets created, right? And one thing I like is throughout the story, a lot of things are happening. Some characters are in and out of your party, and you so it's like you get to learn them, you get to see the advantages of having them, and then if something switched out and you have like maybe less people, you're able to you know adjust with your dynamic. It never feels unfair, or you might have more party members sometimes, and so you're just like, hey, well, what can this person do, what can that person do, and you're kind of going from there. And also with Final Fantasy 4, right? One of the things that it introduced was the ATB system, right? The active time battle system. And the idea is is you are progressing. It is turn based, but it has this like more interactive element to it, because it's like you're looking at your ATP gauge and you're watching as it fill, and it's like, oh well, now I can attack, and you know you can change how that flows and how that functions, so you can get more attacks in, right? Before your opponent can hit you, right? You can play around with that, and it adds a new element to that game, and it shows up in other Final Fantasy titles. So I think it's pretty cool. And so you do have like a lot of customization as you go on, and you have to adjust a lot as you play through. And so I do want to talk about the story, but like I said, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers. I just like this is going to be me appreciating it and just talking about it. So there is a lot more that I could say, right? But I want to get across that idea of like, hey, Final Fantasy, despite different combat systems throughout their games, they're pretty much getting at the same thing, right? Um, and I think that's cool because like you can have something new but something familiar, right? And this is true of old Final Fantasy games. This is true of new Final Fantasy games, turn-based, ATB, which is still turn-based, but what a twist. Real time, whatever the case may be. They're getting at the same things at the end of the day, just with a different presentation. Even with the like the purely turn-based ones earlier on, they're presenting things in a different way. And so with four, you got something that was old. You know, it was fresh because like three went back to a full-fledged job system, but with some improvements. And then four is like we're gonna sort of take that, but we're also gonna kind of take some things from two in some ways. We're gonna and you know one of course. So it's like we're gonna combine some really cool elements from all the games, and we're gonna do our own thing, right? And so with the story, whew, okay. So with the first Final Fantasy games, the first three Final Fantasy games, the story is okay. It's there. It exists. You know, it's not just like out the blue. It's like, hey, yeah, there's plot. It's just like the plot's just okay though. I think two probably is doing the most plot wise than one and three. But four comes along and it's like, hey, we're gonna do some cool stuff with the plot. We're gonna do some cool stuff with the characters. We're gonna make you feel things, damn it, and you're gonna like it. And that's that's how it is. It's like there's never really like a moment where it slows down like in a way that gets boring, right? It's just like if it slows down, which I don't think it really does, it's kind of to let you catch your breath, but like only sort of kind of. And it's like I do feel like it is actually like pretty well paced. It's just like there's always something interesting going on. You feel for the characters, you feel for the situation. Like some crazy stuff happens, and it's just like in terms of like the world maps, it's like there's three big locations, you know, and I'm gonna kind of leave it at that because like one of them is like what? Okay, actually, no, I'm changing that. I'm gonna say it, so you're free to like click off if you don't want it ruined. But I do want to talk about the locations. So here we go. Spoilers ahead. So it's not gonna really. I'm not gonna get into the plot elements with it, but it's just like so you start with the overworld like you would in most Final Fantasy games, but there is an underworld and it's its own thing and it has like a bunch of locations and all that. And so it's like, hey, we're gonna do this whole another map. You know, because it's like it has its own. Sorry, the underworld kind of has its own larger map, like the overworld. But it also has dungeons and towns and stuff like that. But then there is a third location, and it's space. You go to space in this game, and you know it's like you see that in some other Final Fantasy games, but it's just like it's such a big deal here. And it's just cool because you're not just going to space, you're actually able to fly around it, go to different towns on the moon, different dungeons. And so it's like cool because it's like it mixes things up in some ways and you have to adjust to like the different environments and navigating them. And I think it's cool. And yeah, so with Final Fantasy IV, there's a lot of fun stuff gameplay wise that I enjoyed. That adds the ATB system into the mix. It also does like a lot of amazing things with the characters and story. And again, you get to go to space, and that's dope. So yeah, I dig it. And if you haven't played Final Fantasy IV, you should. If you've already played Final Fantasy IV, you should play it again. I dig that game. So I'll see you in the future. Professor Prime out.